But first, taking a vacation to Cuba is easier than ever, especially now diplomatic ties between Havana and Washington have been restored. But the tourism boom is putting strain on the island, with hotels struggling to meet demand. CCTV's Michael Voss is live for us in Havana now. Michael, Havana's economy is surely benefiting from all these extra tourists, but what about the rest of the country?
Rochelle, there are one or two other top tourist destinations which are proving popular with Americans and others, and they too are struggling to cope in terms of accommodation and transport. Numbers are large. Remember, 3.5 million tourists came to Cuba in 2015, a jump of 17% over the previous year, and of those, 160,000 visitors came from the United States. Now, I just got back from the countryside, from a UNESCO World Heritage Valley called Vinales, which is attracting an increasing number of American visitors.
The Valley of Vinales, with its distinctive rock formations, is one of Cuba's top rural attractions. Busloads of tourists come here on day trips to what is the heart of tobacco country, about 170 kilometers from the capital, Havana. Visitors to the tobacco drying sheds see how to hand-roll a cigar, followed by lunch at a 300-seat country restaurant where an increasing number of the day trippers come from the United States.
I think Cuba's on the edge of a change. And I think in a few years, this won't be the same Cuba. So we wanted to see it.
It's still looking pretty busy now.
A lot of people from, I guess we're a little isolated coming from New York, but Cuba's been open to the rest of the world for a long time.
In the heart of the valley sits the town of Vinales, a population of some 8,000 people. 3,000 tourists stay every night, a 13% increase compared to a year ago.
Vinales has long been a popular tourist destination, but as the number of visitors has grown, it's the private sector which has benefited the most. Every one of these restaurants is privately owned.
In 2010, there were no private restaurants. Today, according to the town council, there are more than 70. And the 3 state-run hotels now compete with more than 800 private homes, all offering bed and breakfast. Homeowner Juan Reyes is booked for the next 2 months and already taking orders for August. Most of his guests come from Europe, but he now plays host to Americans as well.
We didn't come with a lot of expectations, knowing that it's a country that's been embargoed for so long and resources are short. So this is completely exceeding our expectations, that the host has gone out of their way to find all of these great food, which is not always easy to do.
The private sector also provides guides for hikers and horseback riders. There may be thousands of tourists, but the valley covers more than 100 square kilometers, offering plenty of space to leave the crowds behind.
Rochelle, one change is that the Cuban government is now allowing local authorities like Vinales to keep some of the tax revenues. In the past, everything went to central government in Havana. Now the municipal council in Vinales has revenues of its own and can set its own priorities for things like health and education or sport and culture. Rochelle.
Now, Michael, you touched on the private sector's performance in Cuba these days. Would you say it's really starting to take off?
Interestingly enough, it's been very static. There's been almost no growth in the number of people working for themselves and opening their own businesses in the past year. Perhaps the big change is that in the past, many of them were considered necessary evils. There were lots of inspections, really heavy taxes. That really has eased, particularly in the tourist sector, where the state can't cope at the moment. What we're not seeing are medium-sized enterprises. There's severe restrictions on just what businesses Cubans can open, and so far the Cubans have not allowed foreign investors to link up with private Cuban entrepreneurs for medium-sized enterprises, for example. So I think there is still a long way before the private sector really does take hold here in Cuba.
All right, lots of developments to keep track of there. Michael Voss, live for us in Havana.